what we are going to be exploring today and next class are solutions to the problems that exist with our subjective filters. So how can we become better at spotting our own biases? How can we become better at communicating with people who don't have the same filters that we have? So there's two legs to that sort of journey of around solutions that I've picked. Hi. Come in. The first one is self-exploration, and the second one is communication with other people. So today we're going to be talking about self-exploration, and we've already touched on that topic throughout the last few sessions. So what I propose is that a big aspect of becoming better at spotting your own biases, issues with your filters, is to explore your own psychology. Self-exploration. Now, self-exploration happens all of the time. You guys already know things about yourself. You've probably you've been with yourself for your whole life. So you already have some ideas about how to explore your own personality. Maybe some of you have kept a journal. How many of you have kept a journal in your life at some point, where you write your thoughts, your feelings? Keeping a journal is an example of self-exploration. Keeping a tab on what's going on. But in a way, it's not a very deep self-exploration, but Facebook, is a way of journaling what's happening. Although it's not really designed for self-reflection, it's more like for sharing with others. But some people blog now, instead of journaling. I mean, that's kind of a quote-unquote old technology already. But blogging can be a form of self-exploration. Talking with your friends, with your best friends, with your confidants. Some people talk to their parents. They have a parent that they feel close to, or somebody else in their family, an older brother or sister, a grandmother, a grandfather, So those are forms of self-exploration. But I would like to suggest the idea that self-exploration is difficult because you are exploring your filters with your mind, with your own filters. So it's like you're using the tool to explore the tool itself, if you know what I mean. So your filters, your mind, your capacity to understand reality it's not just your mind, I would say it's your whole being. And if, you can't escape yourself to observe yourself objectively. So that's kind of complicated. That poses a few issues. Consider as a metaphor for that, how would you go about exploring your eyes, right? You can see with your eyes, you use them to see reality, but you can't see your eyes with your eyes directly, right? You can try to go like that and across your eyes, and you can't see the eyes. So you have to use other tools, other methods to see your eyes. A simple one is a mirror. Not so simple, a while ago before mirrors were invented, but you can use that. That's a tool that reflects back. In fact, the notion of self-reflection, right, is very related to the idea of a mirror, looking at your reflected image with another tool, and there's going to be some distortion occurring. The first one is that, left and right are switched. So that's one way to look at your eyes, If you don't have a mirror handy, you can ask somebody else to look into your eyes and tell you what they see. So using somebody else as a tool to observe yourself and have that person tell you back what they see. The classical, I've got something in my eyes, can you, help me spot it, right? And that's what, when you go see a psychologist, when you talk with a confidant, a friend, when you have those kind of conversations, that's, using another person as a tool to help you self-reflect. You could, imagine fancier technologies today. You could use medical equipment, imaging equipment to look at your eyes. You could use your cell phone to take a picture of your eye and look at it after. But the point is that you cannot look at your filters directly. And if, especially like now maybe you're starting to get more of a sense of what your filters are. But chances are that before we started this class, if I had come to you randomly and said, what are your filters? How do you filter reality? Most of you looked at me like, what are you talking about? I don't filter reality. I don't have filters. I don't know what you're talking about. Reality is out there, you know. And again, one of the obstacles to self-exploration, I've mentioned this before, is we don't tend to be aware of our filters. Our filters are unconscious. That makes it harder to study them. We tend to be blind to them. We tend to believe that we're not biased, that we are objective, that we are perceiving reality as it is. So that's another impediment. So what are methods of self-exploration? Here what we're going to look at today is a summary of different methods that can be used, different tools that can be used. I think all of them are valid, all of them are useful. One of the key aspects to self-reflection, I was trying to find good pictures of mindfulness. I don't know if that's a good one, but actually, like the story behind this is I have a dog. I have an Italian Greyhound that I like to go run with in the hills. And I didn't used to run in the hills, but I started running shortly after getting my dog, and he's been sort of my personal trainer in running. But what I've noticed, I've learned from him mindfulness too. Animals are naturally in the moment. They don't tend to think about the future and stress about what's happening tomorrow. Maybe they have memories of the past, we're not sure, but they tend to mostly be in the moment. When I go running with my dog, he's very much present in the moment. He's smelling all of the smells, he's taking in all of the experience of running. And I find it so inspiring to, I started imitating him, but both also in his running technique, because he runs as a great runner, Italian Greyhound, right? Miniature Greyhounds, the runners. But also just his attitude of being present. Like, I don't know how many of you run or, have a routine exercise that you do. It's quite common for a lot of people to have earplugs listening to music, or, if they go to the gym, maybe God forbid, have TVs on their, stations. I find that, it's a distraction to an opportunity to be present, to be mindful, to feel your body, to feel, especially when you go running in the hills of San Luis Obispo, you have this beautiful nature around you. So mindfulness, a key aspect that is going to follow us throughout this whole class. We are practicing the experience of mindfulness, cultivating our ability to be mindful in the T groups. And outside of the class, I'm inviting you to be mindful. So being mindful means trying to extend your attention to parts of yourself, parts of your experience that you don't normally pay attention to. I would say that's part of it. So, mindfulness. I often give examples with yoga, because I think yoga is an interesting practice of sports that brings about mindfulness. But the other sports do that too. Any sport, any physical activity can bring about mindfulness. But so yoga, you do certain movements and you realize that you have tension in parts of your body that you normally don't pay attention to. You might feel tension in your neck and your back, but not realize that you have tension in a muscle here or there. And the practice of being present and feeling that tension allows you to not only release it, but also have a more holistic appreciation of your body. Right? So you can have, that's one way of extending your awareness. Other ways that we practice in the T group is awareness of where your thoughts come from, what are your thought processes, also your emotions and how they relate to your sensations in your body, and then other, further beyond that, unconscious dynamics that happen in how you perceive reality and interact with others. So that's really hard. So if something is unconscious, trying to extend your awareness to that, being mindful, means trying to bring out the unconscious into consciousness. So mindfulness helps. Mindfulness can occur in meditation. Mindfulness can occur in sports. Mindfulness can occur as you're walking around. It's really a practice of just saying, can I get outside of my tunnel vision and try to sort of widen my gaze and sense what is going on, right? I was talking about earlier about what is your state when you wake up in the morning. Are you stressed? Are you happy? Are you excited? Are you relaxed? Are you excited about something? You might not be thinking much about that, but your state will orient your whole day, will orient how you perceive interactions with people in the morning, will affect how you interact with others. So if you can be mindful of your state, for example, in the morning, and say, I'm feeling this way this morning, and be mindful of how it influences how you interact with others. Like maybe I'm stressed, and I realize when I'm stressed, I'm kind of curt and not very courteous with people around me. I've noticed that I didn't notice other people's needs, I noticed that I didn't listen really to what my wife told me this morning. I didn't, I was kind of like impatient with my son when he asked something that took more time than I wanted to take, So I might, mindfulness would be like me trying to notice how my state affects all of that. And how, when it's the weekend and I'm relaxed, I'm much nicer, I take more time, I'm more courteous to people, So I might start noticing those things, and that's a form of self-exploration. Once you become aware of all of these things, you can try to change them. The goal of being aware of self-exploration is, awareness is valuable in and of itself, but it's also, then it allows you to potentially make changes. I'll add one more thing. It is functional that many of the processes that occur in our psyche are unconscious. But why are most of those things unconscious? I'll bring back the notion that we saw in the first class that our ability for consciousness is limited. It's like a spotlight in the dark. So we can't be aware of everything. We're not smart enough. We don't have big brains that are big enough to be aware of everything at the same time. So we have to make choices unconsciously. So everything that can be automated and occur under the threshold of awareness is less cognitively costly. So we only want to focus on what is important for us to focus on. So that's why, we can't be always mindful of everything at all moments. If all of a sudden a threat manifests and you need to defend yourself, that's what you need to be focusing on. Or if a particular opportunity manifests and you want to pursue that, that's where you're going to focus your awareness on. And you keep monitoring, though, every time you're pursuing a course of action to address a threat or an opportunity, you're always subliminally monitoring the environment for other opportunities and threats, bigger opportunities, bigger threats. So, I gave the example of right now my focus is trying to give a lecture, focusing on what I'm saying, focusing on the story that I'm telling, but if all of a sudden I hear a threat like a gunshot, I will hear that and redirect my attention to what was that noise. Do we need to protect ourselves and evacuate or something like that, right? So it's functional for most of the processes that occur to be unconscious, but when we are in mode, when we are in self-exploration mode, when we want to learn about our filters, then it becomes important to raise our awareness about those unconscious stuff that occur that normally are automatic. It can be very hard to change an automatic process. I will just point out that I've used the term automatic and unconscious. Those tend to be used as synonyms in psychology. The term unconscious is more often used in the terminology of psychoanalysis, which you've read about in the chapters and we'll talk about more today. Automatic processes is often used in more modern psychology, cognitive psychology context, but they're kind of similar. The idea of automatic is, here this example. When you learn how to drive, when you first learn how to drive, especially like a stick shift, for example, which is what I learned how to drive in Europe, it's common, you have to be consciously mindful of what different steps you're taking. I need to push the, depress the, how do you call it, the pedal that you used to, the clutch, thank you. I have to depress the clutch first, and then, change the gear, and then I need to release it in such a way, and while I start to accelerate, just to the point where I smoothly get into motion, and if I do it too fast, then I'm going to stall. And at first, that's a big thing to learn when you're driving a stick shift, right? And at first, you're very conscious of that. You're trying to pay attention to the sensation of the clutch engaging and accelerating. But after having done this dozens of times, and after you've been driving for 5 years, you don't pay attention to that at all. You just naturally, your feet know how to find the pedals. Your hand takes the shift lever and shifts naturally. And as you drive, you pay attention to traffic now, not like your feet and your hands. So the process of driving has become somewhat automated. As you become more and more used to driving, you might actually even be on autopilot while you're driving. You're going to work or to school the same route you always take in, and you have thoughts and other things, like something at work maybe. Problem that you're going to have to address at work, and that's what your attention. You're driving in almost like a daydream, and then you might sometimes this. I'm sure this happened to you. You take a familiar route, but you're going somewhere else. Like it's the weekend. You're taking the route that goes to Cal Poly, but instead what you want to do is to go to Morro Bay. And you find yourself at Cal Poly because you were daydreaming. You were just on autopilot. So that's another example of automatic processes. So that's why we call them automatic. You're on autopilot. You're doing things unconsciously. So mindfulness is the practice of becoming aware, trying to be aware as much as you can of those automatic processes. There might be some processes or some unconscious aspects of your psyche that you will never be conscious of. We're not sure it's possible to be aware of everything, but you can practice.